Hi, and welcome to Sensory Percussion 2 Drum School, your guide to the software component of the Sensory Percussion sound system. In this video, we're going to go over the sequencer module. Sequencing is a fundamental part of building sounds in sensory percussion, and there's a lot to go over. So first, let's dive into what exactly a sequencer is. Sequencers have been around for a long time. Plenty of timeless records have used hardware sequencers, like the Akai MPC or the Lindrum, and most DAWs have some version of a software sequencer. At their core, sequencers allow you to create predetermined patterns by assigning different sounds to steps of a sequence. Sensory Percussion 2's sequencer performs the basic functions of a classic drum machine step sequencer, but it also goes much deeper. It can allow you to move through sections of your song, create intricate percussive patterns, build chords from individual tonal samples layered together, or you can even sequence a sequence. You can really get a lot of mileage out of this one module. The sequencer module can be found in the library under Controllers. So I'm going to just drag in an empty sequencer, and then for the sake of demoing the basic navigation, I'm just going to drag in some empty controllers. So we're not going to actually hear any sound yet. But you can see I just dragged in 5 submodules, and we have 5 steps in this sequence. This tells me that the current step is step number 1. So if I go ahead and play the drum, you can see that it's moved to step number 2. If I play it again, step number 3, and you might notice these 2 triangles above these 2 steps. The white triangle indicates the next step that will be played the next time that you trigger the sequence, and this gray triangle tells you the previously played step. So right now they're always next to each other, but you can also navigate through the sequence using these 3 buttons. This goes to the next step. This goes to the previous step. And this resets to the beginning of the sequence. And you can see these 2 triangles move accordingly. Now, the next time I trigger the sequence, it's going to play the 4th step. And now you'll see that previously played step arrow move to the 4th step. And another way to move through the sequence is using this number box. You can drag it up and down or use your up-down arrow keys. And as I select different steps in the sequence, they become highlighted in orange, and the submodules automatically change focus to that selected step. But if you would like the orange highlight to follow the steps that you're actually playing, you can turn on this follow button. And now, as I play the sequence, you can see that the orange highlighted step follows and tells me the currently selected step of the sequence. Okay, so starting from a completely empty set, I'm going to open up the library, go to Controllers, and grab a sequencer. And as you can see, this is empty by default, so it's not sequencing anything. I'm going to go in and grab these 4 flute samples and drag them into my empty sequencer. And just as a side note, another way to do this is if I have them selected in the library, just right-click, Generate from Selection, and now if I choose sequencer, it's going to automatically create a sequencer with these 4 samples inside of it. You can see that by default, it's set to cycle, which just cycles forward from the first to the last step in the sequence. But if I set it to reverse, goes from the last to the first. Random just selects a step randomly. And finally, manual is where things start to get interesting. If I play the drum, you can see it's no longer moving to the next or previous step, and you might think that something's wrong, but this is actually how it's designed. In manual mode, the only way to get to another step is by using either these next or previous arrows, or reset button goes to the first step, or this number box here changes the current step that you're on. So what is the point of this? Because it's not that musically useful to have to click every time to get to the next step, but like many things in sensory percussion, all of these are assignable, which means I can right-click it and create an assignment that allows me to control it with a zone of another drum or a MIDI controller or even a zone of the same drum. So I just want to use one drum right now. So I'm going to create a velocity assignment on this next button. So now the only way to get to the next step is by hitting the rim. So now we're starting to get some structure going, and we'll come back to this assignment on the next button. But first, let's check out the Retrig button. And to better show you that, I'm going to pull in some chords. If I turn on monitoring, we can hear these samples from the library. And you can hear that they're a bit longer with more sustain. Again, right-click, generate from selection, sequencer. I'm going to mute this top one for now. And this is what the chord progression sounds like. Now if I play fast, you can hear they start overlapping and it sounds bad. So that is what retrigger is for. With retrigger turned on, the currently playing step will automatically choke the previous step, versus when it's off. So that's really a creative decision. There are situations where you might want it on or you might want it off. And the final parameter in this sequencer panel is this plus and minus button, which just adds or subtracts a step from the sequence. So I just added 4 more steps. By default, these steps are empty, so they don't have any submodules assigned to them. So we're going to get 4 chords and then 4 steps that are just silent. So I'm going to grab just a random sample so we can hear when I'm playing on the silent steps. So there are times where you might want silence, so these can come in handy in different musical situations. But let's say we wanted to keep these 4 chords, but we wanted the silent steps to be between each chord. That is where the matrix view comes in, which you can open with these arrows here. So I'm going to delete those 4 steps for now, and you can see this is a grid or a matrix where the vertical axis is the submodules that you have in the sequencer, and the horizontal axis is just the step, the number of the step in the sequence. So by default, it's always just a direct line with one submodule assigned to each step. But if I wanted silence between each one, I would add 4 more, and you can simply click on the square that corresponds to the module in the step that you want. And now when I play the drum, and you can see if I just grab a bunch of samples and put them in a sequencer, what do we have? We've got 19 samples. If I open up the matrix view, you can see it's automatically mapped to the expected behavior of a sequencer, which is just the first submodule in the list is the first step, second is the second, etc. So I'm going to delete that. Delete this too. Let's put the chords back. So this next button is assigned to the rim of the snare. So let's say I want to put these chords on that rim. I'm going to take both of these sequencers, put them in a drum pads module. Now I can assign one to the center and one to the rim shoulder. So let's call this plucks and chords. So now when I go to play the drum and I play the center, this is still on manual. But if I play the chords on the rim, so now we're starting to get somewhere, getting a little bit of structure going. But so far, all that we've put inside of a sequencer is a sampler. But you can put any module inside of here. It could be another sequencer, it could be a note controller, group, whatever. Let's just review. We've got a snare drum pads controller with 2 sequencers inside of it. And I'm going to take this entire thing and put that inside of a sequencer. And I'm just going to name this A section. And copy, paste, name this one B section. And I'm going to go in to the B section, open up the pitch and scale, and let's transpose it down 6 semitones. I'm going to set this parent sequencer to manual and make an assignment on the next button. And I'm going to make it a stick shot assignment. And just for fun, let's find a sample to put on stick shot. I'm going to put that inside of another snare drum and activate stick shot. So now I'm going to go ahead and try to sequence through these 2 groups of sequences. So this is what we call nested sequencers. Although they're not directly nested, there's a drum pads in between them, but you can see we've got a sequencer inside of a sequencer. So that's pretty fun. We can move back and forth from these 2 sections, which is really just a modulation down 6 semitones using stick shot. And now we can make this even cooler without adding any more sequencers, but just going in and adding some effects, some assignments on pitch and scale, and maybe editing the ADSR values of the sample itself. And here's what that sounds like. So hopefully you've gotten some cool ideas of how to use the sequencer in your own set, and you can go out and sequence.